you for coming. This is going to be an experimental session, so I love to get your feedback on this. So I'm going to walk through what I have learned from the Kanban method and how I apply it to make change happen in organizations. So I'll show you a few slides about what I've learned and then a case study. So the mingling of the two may not work, but that would be good, so you can give me feedback whether it does or it doesn't. I think it flows, but obviously you are the people who can tell me. So my name is Nadar Talai, and I'm going to walk through with how I applied Kanban thinking and Kanban method to get a sort of make change happen in an organization and also to deliver a digital service. Hopefully this is what you're here for. If you're not, there's still time. So as I said, this is an experimental talk, so please help me, give me feedback, let me improve it, let me change and update and improve the approach. Also, please share with me during the session or afterwards, if you want, about how you go about making change happen, and if I say something that doesn't make sense to you, please stop me and let me know. We can have a dialogue, because it doesn't mean, I mean, this isn't the only way to make it work. So this is what I've done. One of the key things that I have found that has been missing in the early days when I used to do stuff, I didn't get a clear picture of what it is, why people want to change. So I go in there and somebody says, just do this stuff, and I start doing it, and then at the end, 3 months in, 6 months in, 3 years in, you kind of ask the question, why are we doing this? And then you get mixed messages, well, we just do it because so-and-so asked, or just carry on doing it. These days I'm a little bit, a lot more disciplined actually. Before I start any engagement, I try and get clear definition of why do they want to change. Who wants it, who's going to be affected by it, what are the success criteria or factors for each of the stakeholders, and try and see, because there's usually a mismatch between what people want, and try and call that out early, not because you want to, if you like, embarrass people, but to understand if people have got different views of what good is like, it means, then you know it from the start and you can try and cater for it, or just say, well, we cannot actually deliver this one and that one because they actually conflict. So what it is that we are here to do. Try and get consensus on that one. And then go for it. Try and understand. The other thing that part of the approach is I've tried and I've learned by sharing the problem, I get a lot more and better solutions. So part of my job is to see problem or help people see the problem. I don't necessarily go in there and give them a solution. It has been most of the time the solutions that the team and the people and the organization have come up with are better than the ones that I had in my mind, even without sharing it with them. I think, well, we should do this. But when you share the problem, we work on the solution ends up to be a much, much better outcome than the one that I had in mind. So, that's my approach. Again, as I said, is not the only approach, so please shout. So as I said, there is a mixture of this is the approach and this is the case study. So for this particular case study, was fairly simple reason for changing. We want to go public with a service that we had. So a bit of background to this. The service started, the organization started to develop the service. It was very reasonably close to going public, and there was some question marks. So that was the reason. Let's have it. So that was fairly simple. But then, okay, so we want to go live. What does that mean? What are the outcomes that you're after? What does that mean for you when you say, I want to go live? What does that mean? So for this particular organization, it was about passing an assessment, a service assessment, and also it was about changing the way we work so that the ways we work will deliver the outcomes that we want. In other words, passing an assessment or going live is a normal run-of-the-mill thing that we do. We don't have to do anything special or anything different, but change the way we work so that we achieve the outcomes we want. So really, another way of putting it is to sort of improve and deliver at the same time. Do what you do, but also keep improving. So you're continually improving and There's no special gate or hurdle or anything like that that you want to go through to sort of go launch a service. So that was it. Of course, the other criteria was to make sure that the organization is sustainable and they can sustain the change themselves. They don't need people from outside to go in there and help them all the time. So identify the internal coaches, work with them, and get them to do more of the work than me. So there you go. So that was a case study and the transition approach. I think you probably have heard this a few times by now. So it's about starting from what you do right now, acknowledging the successes of the organization, what they got here, understand where you are right now, build from that, and then move on to, sort of start changing from where you are now to where you want to go. Self-sufficiency is a key thing, is to make sure, transfer the knowledge to the internal people, internal team, by helping them, well, initially show them what the problem is, but actually get them to start to identify and watch out for problems themselves. Because if they are forever dependent for external people to highlight the problems, I haven't really done my job right. Part of my job is to make sure that people start looking for signs, niggles, that usually we ignore early days, and then when they become a problem, you try and address, is to try and show them that, if you watch out for things early, there are usually signs that we forget or ignore. If you stop ignoring them, you can make small changes and get better results much, much quicker. So I think I've already talked a bit about this. Identify who your internal coaches are, understand what your current capabilities are, where are you right now and where you want to go. And it's not about mapping a step-by-step plan, but it's knowing where you are and what the gap is, and then knowing what the first step should be. And then by taking the first step, we learn more from that, and then that will guide us into what the next step should be and should be and should be. So it's not about having a stepwise plan from here, 10 steps like this, but one at a time and then moving forward. Part of the challenge with this is this organization, like other organizations I've worked with, a lot of the time they work with project teams. So teams are formed for a particular project, they deliver the project, they go back to a pool, and then they come back together. One of the challenges was to help the organization see the advantages of their current way of working, and also what they could potentially get if they had teams working together, long-lived and stable. This was a big change for this particular organization, because they're very much used to, this is the project, you deliver it, and then you go back to a pool, and then you get, if you like, assigned another project. And we'll come back to this one to see how we managed to get there. For one particular, I can tell you now, so for the particular team that I was working with, we managed to secure them to live together at least for another, as far as I know, for another 6 months to 9 months. And that's an experiment they're doing, and if it's successful, they will sort of extend that out and roll that way of working outside this particular team. I will be in touch with them, and hopefully this time next year, maybe they'll come and do their own presentation rather than me doing it. So one of the other things is about understanding what our capability measures are. So capability measures sound, big, daunting thing. For me, there are a couple of things that always help me. What is your delivery rate? How many items do you deliver per week, per month, per quarter, depending on your delivery rate? And completion time for the work items. Those two things are usually enough to get an idea of, and to be able to answer the question, okay, when will we be done then? How long will I need to deliver these set of features? And if the time scale doesn't match, what are the options? What can we do? What can we not do? So this is, if you like, the method. Now then, here comes the case study. So I get engaged to sort of do work with the organization and come up with an assessment of how likely are we to hit a date that was already planned, and how likely is the team to hit it. So this is the high level. At the high level, I looked at it. it was very interesting when I walked into the area, the working area of the team. There were a couple of dates, very visible. 2 dates, you know, the internal date, external date, launch date, sorry, 3 dates. Very visible. Those were about the only thing that were visible. There was nothing else visible in the team. There was no visibility of how the team is progressing, whether it's day by day, week by week, month by month, against the project. But the dates were visible and everybody was saying, yes, we're going to hit those dates without actually having any evidence that we are or aren't going to hit it. So part of the assessment was to, if you like, interview the individuals within the team, have a chat with them, work with them to look at their, the tool that they were using to manage the work items, to get some statistics from the tool and see, okay, how likely are we to finish if we look at the evidence? Because, you know, it's all right to talk to you and you can give me your opinion or judgment, but then we also need to sort of back that up with some evidence. And the evidence didn't match, not everybody in the team, but significant people in the team sort of believed that they can deliver on time. This was a combination of many things. Everybody was just looking at their bit. Nobody was really looking at the work item as it's being done or delivered. So it was only just, I do my bit and I hand it off to somebody else. I can do that in the time scale. But reality was doing your bit is not enough. We just need to make sure that it's fit for purpose. You know, it's a usable service. When we put it out there, people can use it. That was it. The other part of it was that there was a fair bit of coercion that people felt obliged that they have to meet this date because that's the date that's been published and everybody is asking and they're saying, yeah. So that was, so you saw the, if you like, the management overview, and this is the executive summary, and these are some of the other things about the case study. The working practices, like most other organizations, because we keep being reminded and trained that busyness is good and you got to be fully utilized, there was a lot of focus on starting. Everybody was busy. Everybody had at least 4 things they were working on. At least 4, and I'm not joking, there was at least 4. But we weren't finishing many things. And one of the things you could see it was if you looked at the sort of number of features being, if you like, started or developed and number of features accepted, you could see that the development is going up, but the acceptance rate is staying steady. Same thing with the defects. We had getting a lot of defects started, but nothing being accepted. And also a side effect of that, because there was a lot of drive to sort of get the work item done, defects were coming through because well, we'll ignore them, we'll fix them later. Let's just get the story done. Well, how can you get the story when there are defects on it? But that was all part of the, let's be busy, let's start and finish, and let's try and hit the date without actually having any evidence that we can do it. So this was the highlight for me when I looked at the stats. So these are the stats from the tool that they were using. Numbers are slightly different, but it doesn't really matter. The principle, I haven't changed the numbers so much, but there you go. You know, you got in 147 or 140 work items to do in 2 sprints or 2 iterations, where your history shows that in 20 sprints you've done 143. So it was just sheer impossibility, you know. But the team and the organization still was adamant that they can and they will meet the dates. So I presented this. This is what happened. So when I presented, I mean, I worked with a team. It wasn't that I did it in silo, but then we presented it to the decision-making body, and they said, nope, you don't know what you're talking about. This is impossible. Everybody else that I talked to, they say it can be delivered. So I took a little break. So we left it with them. They looked at it. And the organization carried on thinking that, yeah, within a week or so we'll be there. The kind of denials that were coming up, the messages were, well, the tool is not up to date. So the stats you've taken out are out of date. You know, if you actually looked at it, we haven't updated it for a week. So they spent a week trying to update it, do it, whatever. there was still a huge gap. So, even if you were 20% out, you're still miles out. So time went by, and then I went back in. A couple of weeks later, I went back in. I said, okay, that's good. Let's start again. So this is the next bit of the, if you like, the way I approach it. So spoke with the team and the internal coach. I said, well, look, we need to do service analysis, if you like. We need to understand how long it takes us for us to complete a work item, what are the states that it goes to, how many of them we do, those basic stuff, nothing really difficult. Now, and we didn't have a visualization of what the work was and the states that the work went through. So one of the first things we did, so started to do a story map. I don't know, for those of you who are not familiar with a story map, it's just a little flow of, when you want to do, what are the activities that you do to get a job done. Tried to do that, and actually what turned out to be, because a lot of these stuff were defects, so we did the story map, so we could see the activities, but majority of the depth of the activity were defects. So the basic flow was there, but the rest of it was all red. Which was okay, that was actually very good, that was telling for us. But it's not story mapping in a traditional way of doing it, because when you do the story map, one of the reasons I wanted to do it was to see how much of the scope we can potentially remove, because I knew we cannot hit the date. Well, it wasn't me, just everybody could see it from the numbers. That didn't really give us that outcome to say, what can be removed, but it highlighted that the way we're working, we are just generating a lot of defects. We're not paying enough attention to getting things done right. We're just doing it. And that was useful. We got that. And then it was about, okay, how do you work? Visualize it. And the team did it themselves. They came up with a visualization. And actually that team has been the only team I've worked with where they actually, like almost every week or every other week, they tweak the way they're working and the visualization, so the board changes. It's not like a static board that you just have and everything goes in and out. And the last version that I saw starts with, identifying the user needs, understanding the content, understanding the design and development, testing and all that, and waiting for deployment, deploying it, testing, and then signing it off and getting to done. So, but that, I'm sure, now is changed again. And for this particular organization, because the tool that they were using, again, this is something I haven't seen before. The tool is fairly basic. So on the board, on the transitions, they had some of the columns that were like call-out boxes where it would say what is the state within the within the electronic tool. So you would say, at this transition, you press this button on the electronic tool, if you like, so that there was a match between the electronic tool and the physical board, which had a lot more states on it. So we did that service analysis. We looked at the times. We looked at the demand analysis, basically. So how many features we're getting, how many bugs we're getting, how many chores we're getting. Also within the features, are there features that are different? Do they have different workflows? If a feature has got more content and design, does that go through different set of steps? We kind of knew that it does. And does it have a different footprint as far as getting it serviced and done than something that doesn't have it? And look for patterns. So the other thing we want to do is to build frequent feedback. So one of the key things when guiding organizations through this is to try and see if it takes you 10 days to get feedback or get a surprise, how can you find that out a bit earlier? Instead of 10 days, how can we do it in 9.5 days and then try and bring it back and back and back? So one of the key things that the team done was to fairly early on, actually, on the state is after identifying the user need is like, do we have a shared understanding of what the work item is? Not the whole team necessarily, because 2 or 3 people may only be working on that particular work item. They would huddle together and understand before they started work on that work item, do we understand what it means? What are the user needs? What are the acceptance criteria? And usually the product owner would either be sitting with them or be, if you like, jumping in and out. We had an embedded product owner. And again, clarifying what is required before you start working on it. And also making mistakes visible. That was, before they were hiding. So somebody would do something and find a way of fixing it. That wouldn't necessarily be shared with others. Just making mistakes visible. It's not about celebrating failures, but it's about sort of making sure that we put that learning into the way we work and then learn from it and don't do it again. That worked. One of the manifestations of that was a couple of iterations or 3 iterations, if you like. First off, defects. Well, first off, we know we had defects and you kind of ignored it and raised a ticket and came back to it later on. Then it was, as the work item was flowing, you put a red sticker on it and put it back to development, and then you pick it up at a different rate. And then it got to the stage where actually, if it fails, we want it to stay where it's failed and we want to fix it. Yeah, it's still stuck a red sticker on it, but we didn't move the ticket to a development column. It was still in test, and we get people to work on it, but stay in the column where it was failed. So it was visible that we got that far. We thought we understand it fully, but then we didn't actually. So we fixed it in situ, and that sent, if you like, better feedback to the team. And also stop this business of, if this was, if when we started work on it, we decided this was more important than something a bit that we started later on, when it went back to development, we lost that sequencing. Because when it back into development, it had to wait for developers to be free and then go back to it. So that also had the other advantage of making sure that we deliver in the order that is most valuable to us. So those were the kind of things that the team changed. I think some of this I've spoken, but I will bring these out. There was no definition of ready, so work items were just being put on the queue or in the queue, and the people were picking it up and understand, well, I don't fully understand this, what does this mean? So that's one of the things that the team introduced. We want a definition of ready. In actual fact, it was the QA engineer who actually was very adamant that we need to have this thing before anything starts. I want to have this definition of ready. And that's what the team came up with it. So this is our definition of ready, and this is our definition of done. The combination of the two helped build some quality into the process, make sure you don't start something that you don't know what it means, making sure, and part of the definition of ready was that the story needs to have an acceptance criteria written on it. And if it didn't have an acceptance criteria, we wouldn't necessarily commit to it. It didn't mean that we didn't start working on it. So sometimes the team would work with the product owner and the subject matter experts to, if you like, quantify what the story is and write the acceptance criteria, but it wasn't the commit point for the team to start working on it. So those were the kind of things that they came up with. Anything? I think I've gone through all of this. Yep. So completion time distribution. This is, I think you've seen this graph. Can't really see it, but there you go. I think you've seen this earlier. I think Mike sort of presented something like this. So this, the x-axis, it just shows you the number of days it takes to complete a work item, and the y-axis is how many times we did that. So 2 days, 3 times, 4 times, and once, and the colors are here. So that's features, bugs, and chores. There's only one chore. And as you can see from this frequency distribution, you probably can guess that there are potentially 2 types of work items, because it looks like there might be one lot like that, and there's another lot here. So that may be the content design, maybe not. We don't know, because we didn't get that far. But that's basically that. But that was enough for us to give the predictability that we wanted. So that's on the work item completions. Any questions on that? No. And delivery rate, similar kind of thing. So this is just the number of work items we complete every sprint. So sprints on this axis, on the x-axis, and the y-axis just shows you the numbers, whatever they were. There is variation in it. The objective is never to eliminate variation, but if you like, reduce the range of that variation. You'll see in a few slides up later, I show you how the first 20 sprints were, if you like, and what the last 9 or 8 sprints were, and you can see it. So that's there could be velocity, it could be a number of work items. We count number of work items, nothing else. Any questions on that? No? Okay, so I've spoken about this, a little bit about this, but this is the explicit, if you like, way of saying it. Visualize work, limit work in process, measure and manage capability, explicit working policies. So the team started to have, definition of ready, definition of done, their own team charter that they came up with. And somebody actually, also they had, what design means, and also MVP. There's a photo of it going right. It's the one that I think John asked who's come up with it first. We actually had that photo on the wall. The one about a car. We start with a 2 wheels and scooter, if you like, and then bike, and then the rest of it. So that was another way that the team, because the organization was new in their journey, and MVP was one of those. Even with the organizations that are very mature, MVP is pretty hard to get, because the minimum thing for most people is the maximum they can get in. So everybody starts with, they just change the minimum to the maximum viable product, so everything goes in, and you kind of say, well, look, we can't do all of that. So actually, let me just jump back here. Something I forgot to mention, which is quite important. We used this distribution and that distribution, but this is showing the new, so if you like, the later 7 states. But for the original delivery, for the first 20 sprints, I used the distribution, which is similar to that one, to speak with a senior program manager. Because after I got re-engaged, we said, okay, we need to hit this state. This state is just impossible because it was like days away. There's no way we can do it. Okay, when can you do it? So I looked at the distribution, and using the, we gave the 80%, 85% confidence. We said, look, this is looking like we need 13 sprints. Well, no way we can get 13 sprints. But I can go to the steering board and sort of ask for 5 sprints, I think it was. So 6 sprints. So fine, we can do that. I said, whatever you ask for, we will support you, but the evidence shows that we need 13 sprints. We can go with any number, but the evidence shows that given the amount of work that we have, we need so much time. Yes, of course, we will work and try and improve the way we're working, but we've got to be realistic in how much improvement you can achieve in a short period of time. So we got that commitment, we went ahead and started doing it, and we started to manage the scope and try and remove some of the scope. So I give you the end, and then we go back. So what we ended up, we got 6 sprints, if you like, funding to carry on, and with a commitment that every week we will forecast. And our senior program manager was very engaged with the team. He was there most days, and he could see it. And then we basically got extension, and we delivered in 9 sprints. And also we removed some of the scope. So some of the scope went away, and we managed to deliver it in 9 sprints. So that service went live. So sorry about the rollback. I forgot to mention that bit because that's quite important if you want to do it for yourself. So if you look at your delivery distribution, you should be able to work out with reasonable degree of confidence, and you don't need much more than the delivery rate to say, okay, given this amount of work, how long, how many weeks, months, whatever, is it likely that I need to finish this? And of course the challenge is going to be usually the number that you come up with and report back is not going to be the number that the people who are receiving the message want to hear. But then you've got to work together and say, look, It's not about me making it up. This is how I derived it, and that's why we need so many weeks. And of course, you then need to work with your organization to see how you do it, how much scope can you remove, and how much time can you get. If you can't do any of those, then it's hard. So that's what we set out to do, and this is what we actually achieved in the case study. So visualization of work was pretty good in this organization, and also the visualization was being updated as they improved their ways of working. They would also make sure that the board reflected the new ways of working. Measuring and managing capability, yeah, that was good. You know, they were getting the measures, they were just putting it in a spreadsheet. Thank you. I will finish early, I think. They were putting it in a spreadsheet. And it was actually a Google spreadsheet, and we were using it and doing it. As a result of doing some of these things, they also started to evaluate better tooling. I mean, but that wasn't a part of the, if you like, outcome, but that was the result of using spreadsheets and the tool that they had. They also said, okay, let's evaluate potential other tools that will help us maybe get some of this information without having to do the extra work. And that's what they did. Explicit work policies, they had those. They had definition of done, definition of ready, the team charter, and also even what it means for the story to get accepted, all that stuff, which environment it needs to be, who needs to sign off the testing, and then who signs it off. So that was all there. So limited WIP, or limiting working process is grayed out. That's because they made 2 attempts, and although mentally they would buy into it, but we never managed to do it. And I think that's part of the conditioning and training that we've had, because they were all conditioned and trained to be busy. Everybody was, I mean, they felt guilty when they weren't busy. They would sort of come into the day and say, yeah, I can see that that's the work item that is nearly done, so I should work on that. They give it about 20 minutes and say, oh yeah, okay, let me pull the next one in. And then 20 minutes later, they start something else. So I think it was that guilt, and it doesn't matter, you know, they could see with the stats or even with simulations that when they did less, they get more through. But it was very hard transition, you know, and because of the many years, hours, whatever, of conditioning that we've had, it's very difficult for them to transition. We did. So the service was launched last month. We got a commitment that they will come back to limited working process and try it one more time. So I will report back on that a bit later on and see whether they've managed to do it or not. I am pretty confident that they will get there. They may sort of have their own way of doing limiting working process. In other words, what I mean by their own way is that they will probably have some sort of work limit, and they may not honor it all the time, but most of the time, and that's okay. I mean, provided you gradually get to that, because it's one of those things, you know, everybody needs to be busy, everybody needs to fill in a timesheet at the end of the week to say what projects they worked on, the cost code and the rest of it, and the project manager has planned the project with so many hours of this person's time. So when you're sort of not busy doing your stuff and helping somebody else, that's the kind of change that the organization is also going through. One of the things that they are going through is this notion of service-aligned teams, which is instead of funding for projects to sort of say, okay, we have these teams, they are our employees, we are going to pay them, regardless of whether they work on this project or that project. And that's the change that they're going through and saying, okay, if this team is serving, you know, delivering this service, and then we just need to make sure that the service is right and they can see why they're doing it, they can see the user needs, they can iterate their learnings by putting it in front of customers, doing user research, user labs, and building that into the next iteration and going forward. And also the other thing is for the team to then be able to get another service and deliver. Of course, there will be a bit of BAU which becomes the current service, so you keep maintaining and improving it, but you also start working on another new one. And how many new ones you can do and when do they become BAU, that's a transition that the organization is going through, and they will they will figure it out, because I'm sure early on there might be a lot of things that you've got to do with the current service, but a month, 2 months later it may tail off, it should tail off. So that's the thing that there is. So this is, so what are the results, if you like? So I've given you some of the results, but let's look at some of the, so this is, ooh, you cannot see this, I'm sorry. So I don't know, let's see what, I think it's because of the colors. So effectively what you will see is a histogram, a bar chart, which has got, and then something here, and then nothing here, and then and then there. So that's the, sorry, you have to take my word for it. There you go. I don't know whether you can see it that way. So that's coming from the tool that they had. So 20 sprints worth, almost nothing, you know, one or two, you know, a little bit, and then a couple of massive, sort of, if you like, peaks, but pretty much nothing most of the time. And this is what we transitioned to. When we transitioned to, so this is the next slide, which I will go to when I can find a down arrow. So the next slide, yes, there is still variation, but the range of that variation has narrowed down. Something I learned to change the colors on these things. Yeah, oops, that's straight, actually that's just a graph, a photo of the thing from the, so, okay, so some of the highlights. Okay, we did launch the service. Did we deliver everything that was in the backlog? No. Did we cut out anything that would have stopped the service from being usable? No. But you know, there was stuff there that we could have, and we did. The product owner, working with all the key stakeholders, we removed some of the stuff. Did we deliver it in 6 sprints? No. We got it there in 9 sprints. Okay, what else? Have we got a predictable way of working? Yes. I think it's not just me saying it. I think that the team is much, much happier. They can predict when they get work done now. Even with the variation that you saw, they can still predict when they get things done. And part of the predictability is not necessarily sprint-based per sprint, but is more a longer range predictability. You know, if you want to know day by day, if you're that critical, you have to do a lot more, I guess, stats and the rest of it. But most of the projects I worked on, we don't need that amount of, you know, we don't need to know day by day or even week by week. As long as long range, we're okay. Within a month, 2 months, 3 months, we know how much we can do, then that's okay. I think I've done this. So the next steps are, yep, introduce WIP limits, see how long the experiment with the long-lived and stable teams that they started. They've got about 6 to 9 months worth of stability there right now. See how long that lasts, whether it can carry on, and whether they want to extend it. I mean, the idea is that once this experiment, if you like, is proven successful, the organization wants to copy that way of working. Copy is probably not the right word for it. Extend that way of working and see how they can use it for other stuff. And also improve the ways they work and launch better services. That's all I had to share with you. So if there's any questions, comments, suggestions.
So can you say the time frame again that you
went
into now?
In and out, October to March, 6 months. Anything else?
And how is the organisation determining whether this experiment is a success for them?
So I guess there are 2 halves to it. One was to launch the service. They've launched the service. The experiment being successful is about the team, if you like, keeping the team together to maintain this current service, the one that is launched, if you like, the live service, and deliver new services. So I know they've got new service that they're working on and they're delivering. How well they're doing that is too early to say, but you know, as long as they can sustain the team, I'm sure they'll do a good job. So I am in touch with them, but not regularly on a day-to-day basis, because it's just, you know, I'm not going to get enough of a data point. And just in case it's not clear, I'm no longer working with them. For that, I still have the connection and relationship with them. Anything else? Any questions? I mean, hopefully, I didn't get enough time because I changed the case study just before here, so I didn't get enough time to agree with them whether I can use their name or whatever. That's why I'm not sharing any of that with you. Anything else? No? Thank you very much. Did it work?